Welcome to Around the Weird. Here's your host, the museum curator of the strange and unusual, Mr. Nothing.
Thank you, mysterious voice, and welcome back to Around the Weird, a booktube channel where I talk about all the unusual and out of the ordinary literature that I have found in my travels. Today, I don't want to talk about a specific book that I read, but rather I'd like to talk about a tag video, because tag videos can be fun, and I was tagged in yet another tag video. Lucas from the Bits of Lit, once again. I don't just do tags that Lucas tags me in, but also I don't think anyone out there is tagging me in anything. They could very well be, but no one's ever, saying, hey, I tagged you in something. So, I don't know. But anyways, Lucas from the Bits of Lit tagged me in the Shakespeare Tag. And so I wanted to talk about some of the questions and highlight some of the books that I read, because, talking about books is always fun, and sometimes tag videos can be entertaining as well. So yeah, I'm going to link to Lucas's channel in the description. He is part of the secret cabal of YouTubers who do book tags. And he's also doing a Q&A because of his 200 subscriber milestone. And so if you want to say some things to him, talk about books, or just learn more about this interesting and treacherous individual, I recommend going to check out that video and asking him a question. It should be plenty of fun. And without further ado, let's talk about the questions at hand. I will read them and then we will call it a day. The first question, The Comedy of Errors. Name a debut work that is surprisingly good. Well, I would have to say the answer to that is Other People's Pets by R.L. Mazes. I don't know if that's her debut work because I think she published We Love Anderson Cooper at the same time. But either way, one of those is her debut work, and one of those, or both of those, are supremely good. R.L. Mazes has the ability to capture the internal struggles people face like no other. And her work is very funny, very entertaining, and it keeps you hooked all the way. And I really, 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 really like that. I can't wait for her to publish something else. Literally anything else. She's my author to watch for the future, and I hope she does more great things in the future. The second question is Love Labor's Lost. Name a book that is excessively wordy, and I think the answer to that is a book that I'm reading currently. It is Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison. That book just goes on and on and on and on and on and on and on. Ralph Ellison loves to write, and you can tell in his story. The book is 500 plus pages, depending on which copy you got, I guess. But it takes forever to get to the point sometimes. And I do enjoy the story, and I understand why it's important. It's very wordy and hard to get into, and I have to take breaks from it. Like, I'm not going to be able to read through it like I do with other books, because it's so dense and so wordy. And I can see, like, how this book might not appeal to many other people because of it. It's so excessively wordy. So I've heard about it in the past, but I'm not surprised that more people don't talk about it. And question 3, As You Like It. Name a book with a particularly lovable cast of characters. And I would have to say Max Brooks's World War Z, a book about the zombie apocalypse and how the what happens before, what happens during, and what happens after. It's presented documentary style, so you get a whole bunch of different perspectives. Todd Wino, who was a soldier during the whole event. You get a couple of politicians who are playing the blame game, and you also get a few businessmen who tried to capitalize off the terrible events. And I really like the entire cast of characters in this book. Max Brooks does a good job of writing distinct characters who you love and you want to see prevail, and you do see them prevail because this is after the fact and you're hearing their perspective through the whole thing. I really like how Max Brooks in particular manages to make these characters feel real. Like if this apocalypse had happened in real life, like these characters wouldn't feel out of place. And like as I mentioned last year when I talked about this book, I highlighted how it was relevant towards the pandemic at hand, and how like the people there were parallels to people in reality with the pandemic and also with this fictional zombie apocalypse. So kudos to Max Brooks for being able to see the writing on the wall and writing such a compelling story and great characters about it. Question 4. A Midsummer Night's Dream. Name a book that enchanted you. I think a book that enchanted me going back to high school is Eragon by Christopher Paolini. I really enjoyed that book. It was very enchanting to me, following Eragon's story and also the dragon story and Brahm's story, and trying to see if Eragon will slay the evil ruler of this land. Unfortunately, I never made it through the entire series. I really liked the second book. But the third book completely lost me, Brissinger, and I know there's apparently a fourth book, but I haven't bothered to check that out. Maybe I should return to the series and see if I enjoy it. But I recently read A Wizard of Earthsea by Ursula Le Guin, and I got major Eragon vibes from it. And because I know A Wizard of Earthsea came first, it's probably going to be a little too similar. I'm not going to be able to escape A Wizard of Earthsea, so we'll see about that. I might choose to return to it. But in high school, I absolutely loved the story, and it really sucked me in. I would love to see if it could do that. 15 or so years later. Question 5 is the Hamlet question. Name a book you think is overrated. And first, I don't think that's fair to say to say overrated and also Hamlet in the same sentence. Hamlet is properly rated. It's one of the best plays ever written, and for good reason. Shakespeare did his homework, or the person pretending to be Shakespeare did their homework, and it's pretty good, and it's good for it's well loved for a reason. But I wouldn't say it's overrated. But a book that I do think is overrated is The Man in the High Castle by Philip K. Dick. I guess I was just led to believe by others that it was going to be a really solid read. And the premise of The Man in the High Castle, an alternate reality where the Nazis had won World War II and are now splitting America with I think Italy and also Japan. I think that had a lot of promise, and the burgeoning resistance trying to deal with the Nazi occupation. I think that's a fascinating idea for a story. It just doesn't live up to the hype or the potential, because the characters aren't really that interesting. I don't really understand what's going on. I think it's more of an idea than anything else. And I when I made a review about that, Noah from Everyone Who Reads It Must Converse said it's more of an idea or a theme than an actual story. And it might have worked better as a short story rather than a longer format story on Philip K. Dick's part. So I have to say a rare miss on his part, and something that I don't think lives up to the hype that critics have placed upon it. Question 6, Troilus and Cressida. I haven't read that, so I don't know how to pronounce it. But name a book that defies categorization. I keep saying this because I always talk about this, but House of Leaves, which I read recently, which borders on a relationship drama, it borders on a horror story, it borders on a psychological thriller, it borders on some weird fictional autobiography of somebody. There's a lot of elements of the story. And I really like that Mark Z. Danielewski, he genre hopped. I think it adds to the story. It also makes the story, kind of bizarre and inaccessible to many other readers. So yeah, I would say it's one of the more bizarre books that I read, and it's hard to definitely lump into one category or the other. And again, that makes it great, but it also makes it kind of annoying at times. Question 7, King Lear. Name a book that made you re-examine your life. I read last lecture in high school a book about a man who had cancer, Randy Posh. It was sort of his biography, and him reflecting on his life as he deals with that cancer. And he ended up giving a last lecture at Carnegie Hall. He was part of a lecture series where, like, if you were going to die tomorrow, what would you give a lecture on and talk about? And it really made me, at least in high school and especially now, reflect on how we're given a very short life, and we have to make the most of it with what we have, and we have to really fight to preserve the things that we love and whatnot. And so, definitely influential in my high school life, and especially as I go about my life now, I reflect on the book. I should really reread it soon. I think it'd be a pretty amazing book to reflect on again. Question 8, name a book that is brief but intense. This is the Macbeth question. I would have to say the answer to that is And Every Morning the Way Home Gets Longer and Longer, by an author whose name I forget, but I'll put up somewhere around here. I read that book last year, and it was a pretty short book, but I think it was intense in terms of how it explored memories and the act of forgetting and the sadness associated with loss. A really solid book, and the author manages to jam pack it full of meaning and a reason to actually check it out. So I definitely go recommend that you check that out too. Question 9 is the Coriolanus question. Name a book, literary character, and or historical person that you both love and hate. I think a good example of this is The Scarlet Pimpernel. I can't remember who wrote that. Again, I'll put it up somewhere right around here. But it's a book that I read in high school, and I really liked the character because of the adventurous feel of the story. It was a classic, but it wasn't a boring classic. So I had a lot of fun with it. But the more I think about it now, The Scarlet Pimpernel's whole deal was that he was an English noble fighting the French during the French Revolution and saving French nobles from the guillotine. And the more I think about it, I'm like, wow, that's a weird message to be sending to people, that like these French nobles were terrible people who like oppressed the lower classes, and finally the turntables were turning on them, and they had to deal with the fact that they were being judged and whatnot. And so it really felt like the author was or even now it feels like the author is siding with the French nobility over the righteous French lower classes, which is a weird message to be sending. Maybe not so much in the early 1900s when this was written, but perhaps afterwards in the current moment in time where the wealthy, refuse to share, and it's like, well, we got to send them to the guillotine too. Is there going to be some fancy pants English noble who saves them? It's weird. I'm not actually advocating for anyone to be sent to the guillotine. I should clarify that now. Question 10 is The Winter's Tale. Name a book that comforts you. I think a good example of that is, it's down there, I'm not going to grab it, but it's The Life and Death of W.C.W. It's a book that I return to every so often because it's so much fun to read. It's just about how World Championship Wrestling rose with the help of Ted Turner and with its distinct wrestling style, and over time, due to poor management decisions and the lack of care on the wrestlers' part and a whole bunch of other issues, it just collapsed, and it was ultimately absorbed by World Wrestling Federation, WWE, as it would later become known. And I really like that, the entire story. I'm a big fan of wrestling, so it's always fun to be able to just turn to that story. And even though it has an unfortunate ending, it's still highlights one of my favorite eras of wrestling, the Attitude Era. So I'd have to say that's in my comfort story right there. And number 11, the bonus question: Julius Caesar. What story recently usurped the throne for your favorite? I would have to say, in terms of short stories, one that I recently read that was like, wow, this is really good, and completely changed my perspective on short stories, is The Ones Who Walk Away from Omelas by Ursula K. Le Guin. I can't get enough of Ursula Le Guin, and her short story, The Ones Who Walk Away from Omelas, presents an interesting way to view utopia. And can we have utopia if there's at least one person suffering? And if only one person needs to suffer, does that justify the utopia that you've created? A lot of interesting questions, and I always love Ursula Le Guin because she can make you think and can offer an interesting perspective. So I think that's usurped the short stories. Like every other short story that I've been reading has been chasing The Ones Who Walk Away from Omelas. And so I definitely recommend that you find that if you can. It should be available online. If you wanna read it that way, it's a pretty short read too, so worth checking out there as well. Those were my thoughts, my answers to the questions for the Shakespeare Tag. I once again want to thank Lucas over at the Bits of Lit for tagging me here. If anyone can hear the sound of my voice into the far future even, I recommend that you do this tag. I'm specifically going to tag Miranda from Miranda Reads, I guess. I don't really, nobody really interacts with my channel enough to say do this tag, but I'm sure whoever reads it, maybe the Codex Cantina, if they haven't done this already. So, those are the answers to my questions. Comment below if you have something to say about a specific book that I talked about. Otherwise, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so that other people can find this tag and do it if they want to. And in the meantime, I wish you the best of luck in your weird and star-crossed travels. Farewell.